Hi everyone. This will be the video for the overview for Chapter 1. Hello everyone. This is Chapter 1, the overview. Chapter 1 is going to deal with politics and citizenship. The first concept that will be discussed is American political culture, and it talks about its core values and its overall definition and what it means in the United States. Also, too, we'll be covering the types of government systems. This includes not only political systems, but economic systems. Also, we'll talk about the American ideologies, how that all plays into part, how it functions, again, definition. Also, too, we're talking about political narratives and what it means to be a mediated citizen, which comes about from social media, which has really changed the entire dynamics of how citizens or individuals get information in modern time. And then we'll also talk about hashtag activism. And lastly, I will show a few videos on some of these items I've just covered, and also on populists. One thing I definitely will give you at some time during the overview videos is I will give you additional information that you will not necessarily get from the books. And this is one topic that the book really doesn't talk about, is populism versus democracy. I did within the reading of how democracies die, which you saw at the beginning of the PowerPoint. And it was real interesting how I came across some similarities, particularly with Mussolini, Hitler, Chavez, and I made a chart. And with this question in mind of, is American democracy in decline? Because this is a question that was posed from the previous text that we have for this course. And so what I found, and I added on this chart, was Donald Trump, is that there's some similarities, that when the economy is in crisis, if there's a weakening, if you will, it could be a depression or recession, there's social unrest, anything of that nature. And a lot of times when the economy is in a slump, it also impacts the oil, production, or maybe it's shortage, any of those things. And of course, anytime there's an economic crisis, it impacts the, society as a whole financially, meaning, their well-being, as well as jobs being cut short or scarce, which is pandemic, and we're coming into a year in March that it's happened, and it happened this time around with the service industry. And you would think that, oh, that's really not that serious. Well, everyone found out that it is. Being able to go and just say get food at any time you want, or you want to go out and go to a restaurant, whether it's fast food or 5-star, going to a hotel. I mean, mom and pop stores, restaurants, and all that. All of those things playing a part. So when one thing happens in the economy, it really has a trickling effect. So I just want to tell you real briefly about each one of these leaders. Mussolini, as you see, is in the 20s. He did a march on Rome, and the organization that he was or had created and is involved with was called the Black Shirts. And so their whole goal was to overthrow Italy. And at that time, Italy was, it was really, their thing was liberalism. And so the way they thought they could do that is by placing them in fear, meaning dividing politicians. And it's real interesting because this is something that has been talked about for the last 4 years in the United States, and now we're talking modern times. Well, during this time in Mussolini's and during the 20s, there was violence that came about and included 30,000 of these black shirts. And they wanted to really be socialists. That's what they really wanted society to be at that time. And they didn't have a president. It was King Victor Emmanuel III. That's who was over Rome during this time. And so basically he caved in and gave in and said, okay, I really agree. And maybe we should change, how, our ideology here in Italy. And so once the king signed on, believe it or not, Italy's stock market increased, and he was loved. And so that's how he rose into power. Moving on to Hitler, everyone knows about Hitler. If no one else really on this chart, with an exception to Trump, he really brought about violent acts during 1923 within government buildings, and it ended up that he went to jail. And so he was in jail for 9 months, and his whole thing and his movement was National Socialism. And that's, again, that's somewhat, in alignment and similar to Mussolini. Also, too, as on the chart it shows, it was a Great Depression, and Germany leaders, they really wanted a change. They wanted an outsider, and this time Hitler was it. So even though they did not care for Hitler, they really didn't like him. And just think about some of the words I'm using and think about the Trump administration. So it was many that didn't like him, but they knew that he had a large following, and they felt like, okay, once Hitler gets in office, he's in power, we, meaning the elite, those in power to be, we can control him. But it didn't happen. Moving on to Chavez, now Chavez, he was a military officer, but he was an outsider. And if you notice, all three of them were rebels. He rose up against President Caldera, and his group was named the Bolivians. And unfortunately, his movement failed. So he ended up in jail, no different than Hitler. And what happened is that the difference with Chavez is that when he was in jail, he was actually able to control these rebels. And he actually talked them down and told them, okay, disarm. And they did. And because of that, he was seen as a hero. Just imagine that. He was a rebel. And because he called his posse off, if you will, he was seen as a hero. So because of that, the president at that time, Caldera, he actually pardoned Chavez. And so once he got out of office, then he supported Chavez. And so that's how Chavez became into being in the power. So if you look at all of this, and I put some things about Donald Trump. I mean, I didn't put a whole lot of other things about the background. Just on the surface, being a businessman, and you can see these are the various political parties that he's been in, first Republican, then Democrat, then a Reform Party, then Democrat, then Independent, then Republican. So he's been back and forth, and up and down, which is, of course, anyone's choice. But you can't ignore the fact of the condition of the economy. That had a lot to do with what's going on here, and a lot of what really being a populist is.